Glynn Wilson with the Locust Fork News-Journal, locustfork.net. Can you be a little bit more specific, perhaps, anyone, in describing the intimidation on the part of Mercedes management?
I can address that. We've had instances with security when folks were handbilling outside the gates, coming out and asking for identification. I don't know if your team members causing a big scene when team members are coming in and leaving at shift change, and kind of creates a bubble where the team members avoid it. We've also had group leaders and managers who have told team members that they can't discuss union propaganda, as they call it, and so forth, during work hours. We've been told, Jim was told that he couldn't hand out flyers in the front atrium between shifts, and these are things that we've dealt with again and again. I've had security that's actually blocked us off inside the plant where we couldn't hand out bills for a period of time, and finally they would release us and let us, but by that time most of the team members had already progressed in and out, and we've not been able to do that. It's not as bad today as it was 2 or 3 months ago, but these are things that have continued on. But it's just the threats and the intimidation that's come to team members, especially our temporary team members. You know, they're told that if they accept a union card, or if they're affiliating with, they're told not even to speak to some of us that they know are union activists. They've been told that there's no chance that they'll get a job, that they'll just stay a temp, or they'll just lose their job. So those are the kind of things that we've been dealing with on a daily basis.
And along with that, myself personally, I was just doing my day-to-day job, and I was told to report to another location in the plant. And I'm thinking I'm going to actually do a task that's in reference to my job. I get there, and my manager and an HR rep is there. And the HR rep sits me down and he says, "Hey, you're not being disciplined right now, but I want to make you aware that we were told that you were handing out material in the area that you shouldn't have been handing it out in the atrium." This was after work hours. And now a normal team member that hasn't had anything probably would have been scared to death. But in that instance, I said, well, you know, first of all, you know, whoever told you that was not telling the truth. And I said, and furthermore, if I was doing that, I had the right to do it. I said, and if there's a location where we shouldn't be handing out material, then you should memo that or state that, hey, this is not what actually needs to be happening. Never heard anything else from that. But that's intimidation.
Right. Is just to follow up with that, with the claim with the National Labor Relations Board, I understand they're gonna actually hold a hearing on this, and they can make a determination on whether there's a violation of the Fair Labor Standards Act in the case of Mercedes, based on your specific testimony and so forth. I know this is a right to work state, but this is not just a violation of Mercedes principles globally. They're actually, you're talking about legal violations, right?
Well, you know, as far as the
so you could actually sue them in federal court, not just go before the National Labor Relations Board, in other words.
I don't know exactly how it's going to be handled as far as the National Labor Board is concerned. Our main concern here today is that the company is neutral and allow us as team members to organize.
Questions? I'm Supervisor. I'm not affiliated with anything. I'm just a teacher and artist. Do you have any idea whether or not it's possible that when Mercedes was being lured to Alabama, that a guarantee was given to them that they would not be allowing unions? Is it possible? And if so, can you have access to information about how it was set up in the first place?
I'll take it. As far as I know, I would be assuming that they hadn't made any of those promises. I think they were given a whole lot of tax breaks to come here, and decided they would also employ a lot of our Alabama workers permanent, and not as our president just said this summer, you will be a permanent temp forever. You don't have to leave. That's all I know about with them coming here, that they were given a whole lot of tax incentives for make better work for Alabamans and not temporary work.
Any more questions?
Can you talk about the, I'm not, probably already know the answer to this, but can you talk about the overall morale in the plant? What have you heard?
As far as the morale in the plant, that's what we're striving to do now, to get to our team members and encourage them that, hey, by law, you have the right to organize. You know, when you speak on morale, there are several things that affect the morale. And if you're not being neutral, then you won't get a good feel on what kind of morale you have because your team members are too scared to actually show their true feelings. Now, as far as us organizing, hey, we've been doing a great job at it, and we will continue to try and get that information out to our team members and enlighten them and bring them to that point where they can be more encouraged to take that next step forward.
Let me follow up on that issue. As far as morale in the plant, I want to say this, that this is not the first campaign at MUSI here in Vance, but this has been the most successful campaign. We have got the biggest turnout that we've ever had as far as support. I can tell you morale in the plant as far as everyday activities is down. There's a lot of issues that I'd rather not get into a lot of it today, but there are a lot of issues, especially with the temps. They're a large portion of our workforce, and their morale is really down because they're seeing these permanent temps come in, what they call a permanent temp. There are people that are coming in on a 2-year temporary program, and they either get a full-time job or they stay a temp. And these folks have been there a long time. These are brand new people. And then these are temps that have been there 3, 4, some of them even longer than that, as far as the years go, that they're working for $15 an hour, and they're doing the same job that full-time employees are doing. You think about that, what do you think your morale would be? And that affects everybody, even the full-time team members. George, just like George said a little while ago, you know, we're working hand in hand with these people. And it hurts me to know that my coworker is doing the same job I'm doing, and he's got no benefits, and he's not getting paid the way that he should be.
One other question. This Wednesday down in Montgomery, the supermajority Republican legislature is going to take up a bill again this year. It died last year, to actually put the right to work amendment in the state constitution, to put that up for a vote in November for people to actually put that in the Alabama Constitution. Do you think, obviously you probably don't favor that, do you think that might affect your rights in this case, in this state?
I'm very familiar with that bill. The side of the aisle that I sit on, we are definitely against that bill. We worked to try to block it last year. We were kind of successful in getting that done. We're hopefully that we'll be able to work through that. I think that it's inherently wrong to have that right to work statute implemented into the state constitution. While it would be a vote by the people because it has to be a constitutional amendment and go on the ballot, we're going to rally around, if it gets past us, to make sure that the people of the state of Alabama does not implement something in this state to work against them themselves, in terms of their protection and security for workers to have that same decency and human rights to be able to have a good job and to be able to pay their bills on time and having a good job at work. And we're hoping that we get defeated.
Do you think if it were to pass and get on the ballot and be approved, would it affect union organizing like this?
Well, I think that that's what it's aimed at. But I think that under the NLRB, because it's a federal board, I think that they should be able to continue to move forward and be able to have that right to ask the question to be able to vote inside that plant for union. In the meantime, I think that that's what is the intent of that bill, is to discourage unionizing in the state of Alabama.
May I ask you something?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you got any, like, right to work sounds to people who don't know anything like a good thing. If it goes up for the vote, people who don't know anything will say, sure, right to work, yes. Now, have you got some slogan that can counteract right to work? You know, just like reforms usually mean
Well,
good stuff, right?
I
Right to
understand
work
exactly
for
what you're
less is
saying.
what we're putting out. It's
Yeah.
a right to work for less.
Right to work, yeah, okay.
And we were ask groups like this, unions and those other hard-working Alabamians who are working for less to not to vote for that. So we definitely will have to look at a campaign, like you're saying, because it is kind of catchy to say, when you say right to work, it sounds like, yes, you do have the right to work in the state of Alabama, as if it's a good thing. So yeah, there would have to be some kind of catchy phrase to allow people to understand that it means the opposite of.
Yeah.
I want to add something to that right to work thing that I think is part of the intimidation of my coworkers. I think, like you said, so many people misunderstand what that means, because I think a lot of my coworkers think because Alabama is a right to work, that means a right to be mistreated. And I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and my mother was a retired Chrysler worker for 30 years. It's in my blood, and I've always been in the union. I know that you can treat a person with decent and respect and still get a good honest day's work out of them. And that's what I want here in Vance, Alabama.
Wayne Ford from Gadsden, Alabama. Can you explain to everybody what happens to a temp when they get hurt on the job?
Yeah, oh, good.
Okay, I'm gonna speak from my experience in management. They're treated just like a regular team member when they're injured, except the fact that they go through their temporary service for medical treatment. They will be treated in our medical facility inside for emergency first aid or what have you, but anything outside of that goes through the temporary agency. I've seen them get hurt and come back. I've seen some get hurt that didn't come back.
But if the doctor says they can't do their job, are they gone?
If they're, I can tell you that, if they're restricted, it's kind of a tricky situation. It depends on the job that they do, and if they're restricted from it, if there's something else that they can find them to do, usually they will. But I think in most cases with the temps, they'd be required to come back at 100%.
How's, just last question, how has all of this affected the quality of work that takes place in that plant?
As one of the quality inspectors, that is why we as a team here speak, I believe, on behalf of saying we're not against temp workers, but you know, what would be your incentive to do well after not 1 year, but after 2 years, and then after 3 years? And every time you turn around, there's another little loop you got to jump through, and another little loop you got to jump through. So I'll say the quality of work, it went down. It went down right after our president this summer stood up and changed the whole script and said, you know, you won't be going permanent, but you can be a permanent temp here forever. And the next week or two, at least as a quality inspector in the paint shop, one of the AMs wanted to know where all the leaks was coming from. We got leaks everywhere. And they said, when did this start? He said, well, about last week or so they started. They said, oh, right after the president told everybody they wasn't going permanent. So that's our concern. As I said, you know, we want you to just find to have a temp, but make them permanent as soon as possible as you can so they have an incentive to do a good job.